Hey, what's going on, folks? It's Mike here, and in this lesson we're going to be compiling the SFML library from scratch on Windows using Visual Studio. So we're going to download the latest version of the library from GitHub, and then I'm going to show you the steps and the mistakes that are commonly made when compiling the library. I'll show you how I fix those errors, we'll resolve them, and ultimately we'll get a compiling and running application of SFML on Windows system. So if you're ready to go, let's go ahead and dive in. Alrighty, folks, I hope you're ready for a lesson on the simple, fast media library and how to get set up on Visual Studio. Again, this is the full Visual Studio, not Visual Studio Code, so go ahead and download whatever the latest version is, and you can download this for free. I'm going to demonstrate on 19, 22, or any version later, or most versions earlier should be fine. A few other prerequisites for this lesson: you'll want to download CMake, which is going to be the tool that's going to help us configure our Visual Studio project. All right, now that we've got that out of the way, let's go ahead and look at the SFML library. So what we're going to go ahead and do is go to the download portion, and we are going to, again, download the latest version of SFML because we're going to build this from source. So this is always a good thing to do, and it's a way to ensure that you'll always be able to run SFML on many different machines if you know how to build things by source. So I'm just going to download the zip file here so that we have it ready, and that's all the source code in this repository. And already you can see that it's very actively maintained with updates just as soon as yesterday. So again, this is a nice part of being able to build from source. So let me go ahead and just move this window out of the way for a moment, and let's go to our downloads. So right above Roller Coaster Tycoon there, we'll want to unzip this package here. So let me go ahead and just extract this. And I'm just going to keep it in the downloads folder. You may want to consider putting it in a location where you can access it later on, but for the purpose of this tutorial, I'll just put it in downloads. So somewhere reasonable on your C drive would be fine. Alrighty, and this is just taking about a minute here, but you can see all the source files that are getting downloaded here, and then we will have our SFML directory here. So while this is getting ready, the next step is going to be to open up CMake. So now we've got this new directory that's appeared right here in downloads. I'm going to go ahead and open it, and then you can see the files that have been downloaded. Now what we're going to do is create a directory outside of this, and I'm just going to call it build. And this is where we're going to compile all the libraries for SFML that we can use. So this is our source directory, and this is where our binaries will go. So with that said, let's go ahead and look for CMake. And I'm going to use the GUI that comes when you download CMake. So that's readily available. And we're going to do a few steps here. We're going to first search for the source code. And again, that's in our downloads folder, SFML. And if you just go into this, this is the root folder. Now what it's actually looking for in this folder, here I'll go ahead and show you if I click on it, is a file that's known as a CMake list. And that basically says where the files are, the includes, and all these things. So we're going to try to basically configure how SFML builds here. All right, then the next step is to select where we're going to actually build all of our files that get generated. So that's the build directory. I'll select that folder, and then I'll hit configure. And at this point, you can choose whatever version of Visual Studio that you've downloaded. Again, I use 19 by default, but you could choose an older or a newer version as you like. And for the most part, Visual Studio is not too picky, but you should try to choose the correct one. So I'll click Finish here, and you're going to notice that there are just some default settings that are going to pop up here. And essentially what CMake's doing here is making sure that you have all the dependencies, all the external libraries that are needed to build SFML as well. Now, my system is a relatively fresh install of Windows 11, so hopefully you don't have too many problems here or anything. If you want, you can build some examples and these kind of things. But once we have configured, we will generate. And just to show you what generate's going to do here, let me click on the master and our build. This is the sort of configuration here that says, okay, we're good to go here. And now when we actually hit generate, this is in this folder going to generate our Visual Studio solution file. So let's go ahead and open that up. And you'll see it's opening up my Visual Studio 2019, which we configured. At this point, we are done with CMake, so I can close that down there. Again, CMake is a tool to generate project files for IDEs or other build systems. So if you're not familiar with that and want more explanation or a video, please comment below. And let's go ahead and just open this up here. And a few notes here. So we've got our solution here, which has all of our SFML files, and you can see the different libraries here. If you're not familiar with SFML, these are the libraries that we need to do our various graphics work. Now I am just going to build the debug version because I think that'll be useful for beginners, which is probably most folks watching this. But you might want to release if you are going to have a commercial product. Anyway, let's just go ahead and rebuild the entire solution here, and we'll keep an eye on our output to see if there are any bugs that might pop up. And this builds relatively fast. I think Visual Studio on my machine will do some parallel builds, which is nice. So let me just also help keep an eye on what's actually getting built here in this lib folder. And we're doing the debug build. And we can already see some of these libraries are popping up here, which is super cool that we have that all ready to go for us. So it looks like this is working. It's doing a few other builds and compiling some of the other files that we need here. All right, so while this is building here, just to save a little bit of time here, I'm going to actually go back to the SFML page. Let me leave that Visual Studio up here just so you can monitor the project. And we can see that the 8 libraries were built successfully. Let's go ahead to the Learn section, Tutorials, and you can click on the SFML tutorial here. It should work pretty much the same. I'm actually just going to scroll down and grab some of the code here so we have some sample code for a project. So let me go ahead and just copy this here. Now, if you do run into troubleshooting with my tutorial, you can use this as a backup. But again, hopefully this video will just take care of all of your needs. Okay, so let me just go ahead and close this Visual Studio here. I'll open up a new instance and we'll go ahead and create a new empty project. So I'm just going to create new project. And actually, let me go back here. Let me just do create new project. Empty project, so we don't want anything that's been defined or set up for us in any way. I'm just going to call this SFML Visual Studio. You can give it whatever name that you want here. And let's just go ahead and create this project. All right, so this will just create a default empty project. Again, we have this whole solution, and then one of the projects within here will be our test code. Now the SFML libraries, when I compiled them, I did a x64 build, so I'm going to switch that here. If you run into errors, Windows will probably tell you, but make sure that you're building for the right version. That's because we are doing did a debug build of x64 code that's generated. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and add a new item, that source file that we have here. So this is just a regular C++ file. And I'll click on the main CPP here, add, and I'm just going to go ahead and paste in this source code so we have a hello world, and I'll click save. Now at this point, of course, we're excited. We are getting some squigglies here indicating error, and if I just click to run, well, we're going to run into some problems here. So we have some build errors. Okay, so basically it's saying, well, we can't find the header files here. Okay, so how do we tell Visual Studio where those header files are? Because, well, just to confirm here, we have downloaded the source. Remember, that's in our SFML master here. And by convention, these are usually in a folder called include. Okay, so we just need to point our project by right-clicking on it, going to properties, C++ here, and the additional include directories. So I'll go ahead and click on this, edit, and we'll just navigate there one more time. So again, this is in my downloads, SFML, the master, and the actual include directory. Now my files are referenced as SFML/graphics, so I'm just including from this directory here. And I'll hit OK and apply. Okay, now let's go ahead and move to the next step and just try to rebuild, see if we're any closer. We are going to have some errors, as I like to show in my videos. This time we're getting errors saying const expr function something something cannot result in a constant expression. Now these are kind of weird errors. They're coming from this color.inout. So these are our include files, one of the color ones, and it just doesn't like it. Well, I'll tell you, SFML is actually a relatively modern library. So this means we need to make sure we're compiling with a modern version of C++. So if you go to the configuration properties, again for our 64-bit version here, and the language standard, we want to make sure we're using at least 17 for C++. In fact, we can go a little bit wild. Let's go a little bit wild and just do the latest version here. But anything 17 or beyond has the necessary language features for what this is complaining about. So let's go ahead and try to build again and see if we are yet closer. And we got rid of that error, but now we're getting these sort of unresolved symbols. And this isn't something to be afraid of. This is just telling us now that we have a linker error. In fact, you'll see the code here, lnk, that's indicating that, well, we have the right header files. We know what these functions are and the signatures and the data types and so on, but we just don't know where that implementation is. So we need to link in the files that we built. Again, those are these libraries here that has the actual implementation for us. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to properties. And because this is to deal with linking, we click on linker. And the general settings here, well, we need to point to that directory again. So let's go ahead and do a similar stage. Now this time it's in our downloads, SFML, but in our build, because we actually built these libraries here. And they are the debug versions. So I'll click select and OK. And then it's not enough to just point to the directory, but we need to actually pick out these individual libraries. So we're using graphic stuff. You can tell it's with graphics. If you follow the SFML tutorial, or if you've been using SFML for a while, you'll know that we need system and window as well, at least for the minimum for this. So for that, I'll click apply. And the input, the actual libraries, I'm going to go ahead and include SFML graphics -d.lib, SFML system -d.lib, and SFML window -d.lib. Now, why the -d at the end? Well, we built the debug version of SFML. So let me go ahead and just show that here. You have the -d. If you do the release version, you usually don't have it. That's just a convention. So you know which libraries you are gluing in. So these are our libraries that we're going to add in. I'm going to click apply and OK. OK, so that should resolve this error. Let's go ahead and try one more time. And let's see what happens. Oh, something popped up and almost there. It says the code execution cannot proceed because FSML graphics was not found. This .dll file. Reinstalling the program may fix the problem. Well, I don't know about reinstalling the program. This just looks like something that we have to fix. So the issue here is that, well, everything's sort of set to go, but we need these actually dynamically linked libraries. So at runtime, while a program's actually running, it needs to essentially load these files that end in DLL for dynamically linked to our executable. So I need that graphics library. I need the system one, and I need window. And if you do other stuff with networking or whatever, you'll need to copy those later. So let me just go ahead and copy these. And where do I paste them? Well, where is this project here? Well, wherever it is, let's just go ahead and open the file in the File Explorer. And we need to find our executable. So if I go up a directory here, there's an x64 directory because we're building an x64. We're doing a debug version. And here's our actual executable file. And our executable, when it launches, one of the locations it will look for these dynamically linked libraries is in the current directory. So you'll often see them copied in with our executable here. So let's go ahead and try to execute. And voila, there we have our actual circle here. And our application is executing. So that's pretty cool. That's building SFML from source, putting it into Visual Studio, building the Visual Studio project, debugging it a little bit, and then now you can write whatever SFML projects you want. So I'd recommend you could copy this project or just follow these steps again if you create something else. And I hope this was helpful. All right, folks, I hope you found that lesson useful and are now able to run your SFML applications on Windows. And if you ever find yourself in a problem where you just can't get the binary versions of the library built, you can now do it from source. And hopefully you learned some other skills just about compiling software in this video. And if you found those skills useful, please go ahead and like and subscribe, or otherwise comment below on what you'd like to see next. All right, folks, thanks for joining. We'll see you next time.